Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome on right back into Inside the Huddle. I'm your host, as always, Lucas Hill. Thank you once again for joining in on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon edition of Inside the Huddle. We got a lot to talk about today. We got to talk a lot around college football. I think Luke Miller of Inside or of State of the Stallions is going to come on with us, talk some Birmingham Stallions football. We'll preview that. We will also be talking a lot around college football. So just really, really excited for that. So, yeah, man. I mean, we'll see what happened to them at the end of the day with this. All right, if you want, everybody do us a favor. If you're watching us on X, make sure that you are liking our videos. Make sure that you repost them. And make sure that you are also following us on X at Lucas_Hill23 for everything involving the world of college football, UFL action, hell, NFL action, anything football. We're here breaking it all down. Also breaking down a little bit of basketball and baseball inside. College baseball opening day will be this weekend, and we are excited for it, baby. And guys, we got a lot that we need to discuss, especially with regards to college football, because really, trust me, there's a lot that I think people are about to hear today and be really shocked at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and let's talk. So, first of all, we got to talk about the headliner of today's today's game. Dude, how about Texas Tech, by the way? Let's talk about just what they've been able to do this year and what they've been able to do in the portal. Let's talk about some of the most underrated and overrated teams going into 2025. And believe me, there's a lot. There's five, actually about 3 or 4 or 5 that I've counted on both sides that I think can make a lot of noise in 2025. So let's go ahead and let's start it off. The first team that I would say is fairly underrated going into 2025, you would have to think that Texas Tech has to be the team. You know, just seeing what they've been able to do through the portal and what Coach Joey McGuire was going to do, everything just seems to have come together. You know, obviously losing a guy like Zach Kittley, who's now at FAU, and Sheil Wood, who's going to be the new defensive coordinator coming in from Houston. And then you bring in Mac Leftwich, who was in the G.J. Kinney offense over at Texas Tech. And look, there's a big-time portal class that you brought in. Number 2 portal class in the nation. Texas Tech is loaded in the portal. Look, you have done an unbelievable job of being able to build from the portal. You really have. You got to back up in Mitch Griffiths, who is a 4-year guy from Wake Forest. Didn't get a lot of playing time, but still was able to get a lot of pieces into Lubbock, Texas. You look at one of the best transfer portal classes. You bring in Romello Height, who's one of the best edge rushers in the portal. He committed there. You talk about Lee Hunter, Skylar Gill Howard. All 3 of those guys are going to be excellent on the defensive line. All were from other programs. Lee Hunter came from UCF, was a star there. The biggest one I think a lot of people are talking about is Romello Hunter. And look, Romello Hunter had a great season last year, top 25 edge rusher, number 35 player in the state of Georgia. And Romello Height just brings you so much as an edge rusher. I mean, he's so good off the edge, is able to – I think he has an opportunity to break out. 34 tackles, 6.5 TFLs, 2.5 sacks, an interception, 2 forced fumbles. Spent 2 years at USC. Didn't really do a whole lot, but 2023 didn't do terrible. 21 tackles, 6 TFLs, 4 sacks, and a fumble recovery. I think with you getting him really bolsters your defensive line, and it really is going to help you with everything that you have going on, especially with you having to improve up the defensive side of the ball. Lee Hunter, you definitely want coming out of UCF. The biggest thing, though, is what your portal haul looks like in the backfield. Quentin Joyner is probably the biggest one. Quentin Joyner was a big get for Texas Tech. It really was, and it was really, really big. Yes, I know that you might have lost a guy like Jordan Brown and Micah Hudson. You obviously missed those two guys. But at the end of the day, guys, I mean, you can't hate on what you still have returning for Texas Tech. Look, Joey McGuire's done a great job ever since he took over at Texas Tech. This was not an easy stretch for anybody. And I think what they've been able to do is just really be able to keep this class together. And it all's going to start with Baron Morton. Baron Morton is going to have a lot of pieces to work with. And I'm really excited for it. I think that he's going to have a lot of success whenever you can finally get somebody like him in your leading your offense. It's really going to be amazing just seeing what he's going to be able to do. Your offensive line is going to bolster up. Overall, this was a great transfer portal class. You got one of the most underrated safeties in Cole Wisniewski from North Dakota State. Played excellent in the FCS National Championship after he initially committed there. And he was a guy that transferred from quarterback and eventually built himself up into a strong safety. Really did a great job of being able to man the middle of the field. Hey, Afton. I ain't got nobody in this damn stream, bruh. Yeah, nobody likes my streams. My streams suck. I love you, though. Thank you for always being there for me. You're the best. Like, you really are. Like, you have no idea. You really are the best. Trust me. I would not be here without you. Hey, did you dip after I started talking about you? Oh, I talked about you for a little bit. Thank you for being here and supporting me. Even though Okay. Let's continue on. Because when you look at where this eventually ended up with everything going on with Texas Tech. Texas Tech, to me, is probably one of the most dangerous teams going into next year in the Big 12. Their schedule is generally favorable. I think you bolstered up on the defensive side of the ball. It was a big thing with getting rid of Tim DeRuyter, who didn't do a whole lot as a defensive coordinator on the West Coast, was never my favorite as a DC, was never a good DC during his tenure. And when you're getting a guy like Shell Wood, who's a young guy, definitely has a good bit of experience around the defensive side of the ball. He's been with multiple Sun Belt teams, was around Georgia State, then Army for 2 years, then was Troy, Tulane, Houston last year. Houston had a top 50 defense last year after what they were unable to do for the majority of the part. And I think with what he brought from Willie Fritz's team, Coach Wood did a great job of just being able to lead their defense. And look, most of the time it wasn't his fault. Most of the time it really wasn't that bad of play calling. The offense just could not get anything going. I mean, it's just a really, really bad system that the defense was in. It didn't help that their offense didn't really help them out. So I think that when you improve on that side of the field, look, you're talking about the number 2 defense in the Big 12. That was impressive. Very, very impressive. And with what you were able to do, especially with all that happened last year and all the ups and downs that Houston had, you really got to give this team a lot of credit going into 2025. Top 25 defense, number 25 ranked defense in all of college football. Gave up only 324 yards of offense. That's impressive. So I definitely would put Texas Tech up there just with the amount of talent that you still return on the offensive side of the ball with what you did in the portal, and I think of what you were able to do in the portal. Let me ask you guys this. Am I crazy to believe that a team like – dare I say this, honestly? Because, look, I could be completely wrong. Miami of Ohio, or not Miami of Ohio, Ohio, actually. The Bobcats, they haven't gotten a lot of love recently. Now, I know that you're having to replace your coach and Tim Albin, who's now at Charlotte, did a great job there. Brian Smith is very capable of the job. He's been with this program ever since the start of the Tim Albin era. You bring back a lot of your personnel from this past year. Scott Eisfording, great offensive mind. Been with Ohio for the last 10 years plus. Great mind. A guy in John Hauser, who is a great offensive mind. Now the assistant head coach and the defensive coordinator now. So he's going to be in a pretty good position. Why do I say Ohio? Because of what you're going to be able to do. Now, I understand you're going to lose guys like Nate Faines, Kurt Maddox, Brian Mentz, and Alan Rudolph. All were huge for you. But you bring in a lot of dudes. And it was really huge to get a lot of guys from the portal. Hell, even from excuse me. Hell, even when you return guys from last year's class. I mean, you're still bringing back one of the best quarterbacks in the championship or in all of the MAC. think in Brett Gabbert. No, not Brett Gabbert. Brett Gabbert's done after this year. Parker Navarro is one of the best quarterbacks in the G5 right now. Parker Navarro is going to make a lot of noise. Make no mistake about that. I think that Parker Navarro is one of the most unique quarterbacks, just with his ability to throw as well as being able to get outside the pocket. I think he's one of the most underrated dual-threat quarterbacks in the nation right now. And I think this year, you start to think this is an opportunity for Ohio to really break out. I just really have that feeling. Here's a guy that threw for 2,400 yards and also rushed for over 1,000. I think he could have one of those Jordan Lynch type years this year. I just feel like there's a team out there that is going to want a guy like Parker Navarro that they're not going to get him, and they're going to miss out on one of the most underrated dual threat quarterbacks in Navarro. And you talk about how Ohio wants to do more. I feel like Ohio's not going to get talked about a lot as one of the most underrated teams going into the 2025 season, and maybe a contender for a G5 playoff berth. I mean, you're talking about a team that was predicted to be the 5th in the MAC. They hadn't won a MAC title, I think, ever. I mean, this was one of the kind of the bottom feeders of the MAC for a while. And then you saw what they were able to do. Hung around with Syracuse, got blown out by Kentucky, got their revenge against Miami of Ohio, and got a huge win in the Cure Bowl against J-State. That's a great way for Brian Smith to take over as his first head coach there. Brian Smith's in a good position. Brian Smith has the best quarterback in the G5. You've got an offensive line that's still loaded. And you're talking about one of the best defenses in college in the MAC next year. I think that they're going to make noise. I do think that this is a team that you could definitely see potentially being a CFP buster in 2025. I don't think because of their schedule, it's not going to favor them. Although I will say, you play Ohio State close, even though they're going to lose a lot of dudes. Yeah, I'll tell you this. If you play Ohio State to within 2 possessions, there's a legit chance that the college football world needs to pay more attention to you potentially as a buster, even coming from the MAC. The MAC hasn't had a representative in a BCS/CFP bowl game since, I think, 2016. And I think actually only once they have represented in a CFP. Actually, twice. Northern Illinois was one, and then Western Michigan was one in 2016. I think that Ohio could be number 3. I just have that good of a feeling about them with what they bring to the table, and I think it's going to be a really, really interesting thing that we get to see with what Ohio brings next year. Another team, we're going to go back to the Big 12. What about Baylor? Baylor, to me, just has this weird thing that goes on. I mean, you started to look at what happened at the start of the year. Started 1-4. Or actually 2-4. And you started to think to yourself, man, when are they? This is going to be really Dave Aranda's last year? And then all of a sudden they started winning. You beat Texas Tech on the road. You beat Oklahoma State. You beat TCU. You beat West Virginia and Houston on the road. You finished it off with a pretty good win against Kansas. And then your offense hung around against LSU. And even in the games where you lost 4 of 5, you played Utah, Colorado, BYU, Iowa State. Iowa State's not going to have their 2 best receivers. They're just bringing back Rocco Becht, who, believe me, I think Rocco Becht is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the Big 12 and one that is not going to get a lot of attention at all this year. And it's a disgrace that he isn't. And I think it's really interesting to me. But look at what he was able to do with a brand new offensive coordinator in Jake Spavital. Jake Spavital did a great job. Former Cal, West Virginia, and Texas A&M offensive coordinator for a while. Was quarterbacks coach at West Virginia, by the way. Cal OC. Two-time Cal OC, actually. But you start to think that, dare I say it, but this could be a year where Baylor can legitimately potentially be a team that could win the Big 12, that could shock a lot of teams. Auburn, I don't know what they're going to look like this year. Kevin Jennings comes back for SMU. That could be a statement win if Baylor is able to go to Gerald Ford Stadium and knock them out. Arizona State, you get them at home. Can Sam Leavitt come back and be strong? A lot of people have a lot of trust in Sam Leavitt. I do too. I think he's probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the Big 12. Contrary to popular belief, he's a dang good quarterback. And the guy can really, really take over a ball game. I think that he has an opportunity to do some great things. I really do. Jordan Tyson, to me, is the most underrated, is going to be one of the best receivers in 2025. He's going to be a Biletnikoff finalist. Make no mistake about that. And I think if you can get a win over that, really the biggest challenge that you have is probably Kansas State with Avery Johnson and then coming back. And realistically, this kid is a Baylor team that minimum 10 wins. They could legitimately be a 9 or 10 win team and be a participant in the Big 12 title. You don't play Colorado. You don't have to. You know that you don't play Iowa State. Your only big tests are Kansas State, Arizona State, SMU, and Auburn. And you get 3 of the 4 at home. You're definitely going to have that advantage. I think you do beat Auburn. I think that SMU game could be a toss-up. The K-State game, I think you do win that one. I think your defense is a hell of a lot better than what K-State brings to the table. I think K-State last year just fell off tremendously after they started, 7-1? You know, in your losses last year that K-State had, they were ugly. They weren't good They weren't good wins. They weren't good losses. You got blown out by BYU. You got hammered by Arizona State at Bill Snyder. You got hammered in Farmageddon. You got hammered on the road against a 4-win Houston team. So who do you really want? To be able to lead this team? Is K-State going to be the guy? Is K-State going to be the team? We shall see. I'm not really convinced. I think that Baylor does pull off the win. I think Sawyer Robertson's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think he has a huge, huge opportunity to do some great things. You bring in Kobe Prentice. I like the portal additions. You brought in Kobe Prentice, who has shown flashes of potential. You bolstered up on the defense. You got some big time guys like Samu Tamapipe, 6'3", 375 beast coming from Texas A&M. If he slims down a little bit to around that 330, 335 range, I think he can be an effective interior defensive lineman, maybe even a nose tackle. He'd be more like an Apu Ika in what he was able to do last year. You bring in Matthew Fobbs-White, who had an excellent sophomore campaign from Tulane. Dude has a lot of potential as an edge rusher. I think he was able to show out 21 total tackles, 7.5 TFLs, and 4 sacks. Got a forced fumble as well. So he did well during his last 7 or 8 games that he played in. You bring in Devin Turner. You bring in Phoenix Jackson from Fresno State. And you bring in Calvin Simpson-Hunt from Ohio State. And you also bring Cole Wilson out from Texas State. Look, Cole Wilson's a guy that was an honorable mention all Sun Belt last year. Had a pretty decent season, 4 receptions, 630. Big play guy. He's fast. 5'9", 170 pounds. Put him in the slot, get him on a quick in route, and you could probably just say 88 and out the gate for him. I think that this offense is going to revolve around Sawyer Robertson. And I think that this is a Baylor team that many people need to be talking about. They really do. And because they're not talking about him, dude, Baylor's just going to make a hell of a lot more noise going into 2025. Make no mistake about it. I think that they are a very, very good team. Let's talk about some more that aren't really getting a whole lot of attention. Probably some that people say, "Oh, well, they're not going to do much," but these are one of those teams that, realistically, I think can make a lot of noise. I would say in the SEC, I think that what Missouri brings is interesting, and what Ole Miss brings. I think, to me, Ole Miss is going to take a step back. But realistically, looking at the schedule, 9-10 wins, not out of the question. Definitely would consider that. Clemson, to me, bringing a lot of stars. Clemson's bringing back a lot of their core receivers, bringing back a lot of guys. And when I tell you they're going to bring in some dudes, they're going to bring in a lot of stars in 2025. It would not surprise me that they're a top 10 portal guy. You bring in Jeremiah Alexander, who's one of the best backers in the country, who could be one of the best linebackers in the nation. Very high out of high school. Will Helt, who also had a pretty decent couple of campaigns out for Purdue. 6'6", 265 edge rusher. You also bring in Tristan Smith from SEMO. That's Southeast Missouri State. So I know a lot of you may not cover a lot of FCS ball. I do a little bit sometimes. Tristan Smith's got very, very big play. A lot of big play capability. The guy has a lot of talent as a receiver. 6'5", 205 pounds. The guy is an electric receiver. He's a guy that's going to get you 5-6 catches a game, get around 60 to 70, and finish out the year with about 700-800 yards for you. Not only that, but you're talking about all that you bring back after this upcoming year. You bring in Tom Allen, who's the best defensive coordinator in college football. You bring back Garrett Riley in this OC system. I think what you were able to do was really, really good. You brought in Sammy Brown from last year, who will be coming back. ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. Excellent future that's going to be coming for him. You know, I really have a lot of hopes that he has going into 2025. TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, both guys who are going to be studs on the outside. I think that there's a lot of upside to what they have going into 2025. You're obviously losing Jake Bringingstool. You're obviously losing Barrett Carter, I think, unless Barrett Carter is coming back for 2025. I could be wrong, though. Yeah, Barrett Carter's coming back for 2025, which is absolutely insane. Which I thought it was a big decision for Carter to come back. Again, I could be wrong. But yeah, he's going to the next level. Yeah, Barrett Carter is not coming back. But yeah, you're losing him. You're losing Jake Bringingstool, who's one of the best tight ends in the ACC last year. Look, it's a long uphill battle for Clemson. especially when you look at what you left behind in the tight end room, and hell, even in the linebacker room. You bring back Peter Woods. You bring back a lot of studs, dude. I think apart from the running back room, this is a very good Clemson team. I think it's one of the best that we've seen in a while from Clemson. You bring back a lot of your core guys from Clemson, from at the receiver position. You got a lot of young guys coming back. You're talking about what they bring to the table on the defensive side of the ball on the defensive line. Kate Klubnik, everybody knows about him. Everybody knows about what he's going to be able to do with potentially being a Heisman Trophy winner. I think he will be a candidate. I think that at the end of the year, I think that he has an opportunity to win it as well. It definitely would not surprise me that that does happen. And I think that at the end of the day, when I look at where this team is going to head, there's a good chance that the winner of that first game between LSU and Clemson, it's going to determine who is going to be in the CFP at the end of the year. And that's a big game for both teams. And I think Clemson might have the advantage in that one. I don't trust LSU just yet in opening day games. I just don't. You can disagree with me if you do. I just don't. Because of history. And so with that, I think that Kay Klubnik is the guy that is going to be a Heisman Trophy contender. I think they're one of the most underrated in 2025. Thank you, Dabo Swinney, for going into the portal and going to get some dudes. Okay, so we talked about the most underrated teams going into 2025. Who's the most overrated going into 2025? And I think rightfully so that we have a lot of reason to not really believe in a lot of these teams. First of all, let's talk about LSU. LSU, to me, there's a lot of warnings. You know, a lot of signs that, look, they've gone all in. Make no mistake about that. There was a lot that they have been able to do and a lot that they succeeded in doing in 2025. Make no mistake about that. But I do have concerns. Are you going to be able to win the big game? Number one. That's a big one that needs to get addressed. How does Joe Sloan do in year two? Your schedule? Good luck. That's all I can say. It's a tough one. It's a schedule where, to me, it's one of the top 5 toughest schedules in the league. I mean, you go to Clemson, you play Florida with DJ Lagway, who absolutely torched you on the defensive side of the ball. Are you going to be able to rebuild on the defensive side? The biggest thing you need to work on is the interior, that you're going to lose a lot of moving pieces on. You go to Vaught Hemingway to play Ole Miss. Lenore Sellers and company comes to LSU. You go play Diego Pavia and company at Vandy that played you pretty tightly last year. Texas A&M comes to LSU, and they've got Kevin Concepcion, and they've got Micah Hudson if he does come back. You play at Alabama, and then at Oklahoma, and you play John Mateer. This is a schedule that is rough. Make no mistake about that. Realistic expectations for me for LSU. For me, I think you lose that opening game against Clemson. I think you win the next three. You play La Tech, you play Florida, and you play Southeastern. I think you run the table against those three. You go to Ole Miss, you play a young Austin Simmons squad, and you go up against them. I'm not sure just yet of what to think about Austin Simmons. I thought Austin Simmons was a pretty efficient quarterback. I think he has a lot of stuff to work on, but you're going to lose a lot at the receiver position. So I think that's a win for LSU. South Carolina, to me, I don't know, man. You're losing I'll say this about South Carolina. The picks aren't sexy. What you got in the portal wasn't sexy, but it was consistent. Plus, you got to try and defend a guy like Dylan Stewart off the edge. How do you do that? I don't know. I don't really know. It's definitely going to be very difficult. We'll see what happens there. But I think that might be a loss there. I'll be frank with you. I think that South Carolina's offense, what they did last year was really expose LSU's defense more than what they did already. They were able to expose them off of big plays that they were able to execute on, and they were able to really drive down the field. The thing about it is, if you're South Carolina, if you're better in the red zone, you will have more success. If you're not, then LSU is going to pile drive you. But I think this is a much more experienced USC team. Give me South Carolina in this one. Sorry. I think they'll be 4-2 by the time you get to Vandy. I do think you pull out a win of that one. I think it's another hard-fought win. Texas A&M hasn't beaten LSU in Tiger Stadium in a while. I don't remember the last time they actually did beat. Yeah, 1994 was the last time Texas A&M beat LSU in Tiger Stadium. It's still not happening this year. The road team has won every single game since 2018. This rivalry is getting better, but again, I just think that this year it belongs to LSU. I think they get their revenge there. At Alabama, again, what is Ryan Grubb going to do? I think that might be loss number 3 right there, and I think he might win the rest of the way. So realistically, I'm looking at a 9-3 regular season for LSU. I will say this: Florida's still a wild card, and Ole Miss is still a wild card. Hell, even South Carolina could be a wild card. But the two surefire losses, Alabama and Clemson. Sorry. Whether you like it or not, that's got to be the reality that you got to put in. If Blake Baker's defense doesn't do a better job of being able to limit the big plays, then LSU is in trouble. Make no mistake, they improved last year. How much did they improve? At least they weren't the worst defense in all of college football. They improved. Make no mistake about that. They improved. But they got embarrassed in a lot of games that they weren't able to hold their own. It's definitely one that you would love to have more consistency in. LSU wasn't even a top 50 defense last year. I think they were what? Top 80, maybe? They were 61st in total defense. So a much better improvement. They were twice as good as they were in 2025 or in 2023. But you gave up a lot of big plays. You gave up an average of 5.8 yards a play. You cannot have that. Especially, you were, I think, 61st in yards, or actually probably in the 70s in yards per play. You can't have that. Not with the speed that's coming in the SEC. I'll say this. Does the SEC have the best quarterback class? I don't know, man. I don't really know. There's only one real headline. There was only actually two real headliners. That includes DJ Lagway, Lenore Sellers, Nico Iamaleava, Arch Manning. I would say I don't think you put Diego Pavia in that mix. I don't think you put Marcel Reed in that mix yet. It just takes time, man. I just do not know quite yet. So, again, I'm not sure. I'm just not quite sure about LSU at the end of the day. Let's continue on. Texas A&M. Texas A&M to me is just one of those teams that is. I just do not trust A&M ever. Everybody's going to hype them up every season to be, okay, they're a top 15, top 10 team. This is their year. Oh, this is it. No, it's not. No, it's not. We've been saying this for the last 10 years. Texas A&M is not going to be a top 10 team unless they prove to the college football world that they are not. They are legitimately a top 10 team. I don't know really with what to expect at the end of the day with Texas A&M. Because A&M is going to So I think at the end of the day, if you are able to improve on the defensive side of the ball, things will get better for A&M. If they don't, they don't. And we need to stop the narrative about, oh, things change. Mike Elko is going to be much better as a head coach. It's time to stop that rhetoric because A&M still has a long ways to go in the world of college football. What about Miami? Sure, you got Carson Beck. You sure as hell did. Great job. What else did you get? That's really the biggest headliner that a lot of people have noticed. Because, look, make no mistake. Carson Beck going there in the Shannon Dawson offense is almost like a match made in heaven. It's really, really efficient. It really is. Ruben Bain still coming back. Francis Mayoga is one of the biggest freaks in this next draft class, in the class of 2026. Ruben Bain is going to have a big-time season as an edge rusher. And I think Miami definitely could go and cause some chaos in the ACC. But it's still a tough test. You play Notre Dame, you play Florida, you get Louisville, you play SMU on the road, you play Syracuse, and you go to Pitt. You play Pat Narduzzi's defense, which, as much as people want to shit on Pat Narduzzi, he's a dang good defensive coach. To bring in a stud in Damian Lewis as a defensive tackles coach, maybe DT-wise, you can get better from there. Damian Lewis is a star as a Miami Hurricane. Former player. Guy brings a lot of experience. Where does Mario Cristobal's team eventually lay? because Mario Cristobal has always been known to choke at the end of seasons. Will today be another year? I don't know. I don't know yet. But we will definitely find out more as we continue along. Guys, that's going to end it here today on Inside the Huddle. Y'all have a great rest of the day. Thank you as always for joining in, and we will see you all very soon.